big state, but you're never alone.
The Alzheimer's Association is here to help.
We're all in this together.
From El Paso to Houston.
From Dallas to San Antonio.
From Austin to Fort Worth.
Check out the online offerings from your chapter. Stay home, stay safe.
We're here for you, Texas.
Day or night.
Go to www.alz.org.
Or call us at 1-800-272-3900.
Your caring never stops, and neither do we.
Okay, very good. All right, so I believe we are ready to turn the screen over to Ginny Funk with the Alzheimer's Association. So welcome, Ginny.
Hi, good morning. It's so good to see all of you, most of you anyway. I just think technology is truly amazing. I don't know who, thank heavens there are people in the world who know how all of this run. And okay, can you still see it okay? Okay. Okay, so again, as Tina said, I'm Ginny. I'm the Director of Programs for the Alzheimer's Association. We have been doing virtual classes since we went virtual, I guess, March 13th. So we have really learned a lot, and thank goodness, again, for technology, we can still be able to reach people via Zoom and Blue Jeans. So I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to just go over this presentation of understanding Alzheimer's and dementia and really taking a little bit of a closer look between comparing Alzheimer's and dementia. It's by far one of the most common questions that we get. What's the difference? Is it all the same thing? Also, by the end of this, being able to hopefully recognize how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain, as well as other types of dementia. We're going to talk a little bit about risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, because of course, everyone wants to know that. Going a little bit through the stages, recognizing some of the current FDA approved treatments for symptoms of dementia. Want to talk about research. There's a lot happening in research, so we want to wrap up with that, as well as just a couple of things about resources that are available through the Alzheimer's Association and so many other people on this call today. So first thing I'm going to do, and I don't really have a way to see everyone's response, but just thinking about the impact of Alzheimer's disease, just think about how many Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's. And that's just in the United States. 5.8 million people. Again, that's just in the United States. Worldwide, it's estimated that there are at least 50 million people who have Alzheimer's disease. So we know it's definitely a global crisis, not just in the United States. So with that many people, how many unpaid Alzheimer's caregivers are there in the United States? And that means caregivers, which again, we know as family members. I was on this journey with my mom, and I didn't use that terminology. It's just taking care of my family member. But caregivers, and then thinking about unpaid, meaning you're not getting paid for taking care of your loved one. It's part of what you are doing. So when we look at those numbers just in the United States, there are 13 million. Well, first of all, 16 million. I hear 13 million and think that's an incredible amount. 16.2 million, again, unpaid caregivers just in the United States. I'm actually going to skip over that really quick. We know that the term Alzheimer's disease and dementia are used interchangeably. I hear that regularly from caregivers on our helpline, or, well, we think grandma passed away and she had dementia, but she didn't have Alzheimer's. Or they'll say she had Alzheimer's but didn't have dementia. So let's look at that a little bit closer. A little bit more of questions for you. Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process, true or false? This continues to be one of those, I think, myths that still gets put in the frame of, we're just going to get old, we're going to grow old, and we're just going to all get Alzheimer's, or it's just going to be part of the process. And that's absolutely, thankfully, not true. Alzheimer's is not a normal part of the aging process. We are not going to all grow old and develop this brain disease. That's the good news. Thank goodness. We know there are millions and millions of younger and older adults who do not have Alzheimer's disease and never develop it. How about this one? People younger than 65 can get Alzheimer's disease. True. It's estimated that out of those United States numbers for prevalence, at least 250,000 people have what's called younger onset Alzheimer's disease, meaning they developed the disease under 65. We have a woman who attends one of our support groups for people living with dementia, and she's 43 years old. So while it is much, much more rare, it can happen even at that incredibly young age. So throughout this process, we're going to be able to hear from some experts, as well as from some individuals living with the disease, because who better to hear from?
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
Were you able to hear that okay, Tina? Okay. So, Dr. Schneider, I wish that stayed up longer, but so the definition of dementia, that big broad umbrella term, is having cognitive decline, which I have to say, it's Friday, it's by the end of today, we might all feel a little, weary, brain weary. But dementia means that you're having cognitive decline that continually, progressively gets worse and worse. And not just in memory and short-term memory, but in language, in the ability to concentrate, to focus. There's so many different things. And so dementia itself is a set of symptoms that are caused by over 100 things that are out there. And as that graph shows with the umbrella, we generally call the long handle that comes down from the umbrella, we call that Alzheimer's disease, because it accounts for causing 60 to 80% of all dementia symptoms. So Alzheimer's by far is the most prevalent dementia, cause of dementia. We certainly hear about it the most. The name of the nonprofit that I work for is Alzheimer's Association, but that also includes and other related dementias. So the second most prevalent is vascular dementia. And then Dr. Snyder was talking about, again, some of the other most prevalent ones. And so again, these are brain diseases and not just normal parts of the aging process. And why is an accurate diagnosis important?
Certainly having the diagnosis of Lewy body was helpful in our planning because we began to understand where this was coming from in the brain, where otherwise we would not have known. Like we knew something was happening, but what was it? To give it a label actually helped, although it was a big umbrella. It explains some of the characteristics and symptoms that we were experiencing and seeing.
So I just want to click on this. Here's a list of some other types of dementia. Dementia with Lewy bodies. Parkinson's disease dementia. Parkinson's is one of those diseases that causes dementia symptoms. Traumatic brain injury, certainly vascular dementia. There's also mixed dementia, which is considered to be very prevalent. There are some doctors now who are looking at studies and believe that at least half of the individuals who have Alzheimer's disease have another kind of dementia at the same time. So you can have mixed dementia. So you can have Alzheimer's coexisting with vascular, or you can have Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So many, many different kinds. And all of these types of dementias, we do have information on our website, or we have information about symptoms, because there are differences for sure. So if you have any questions about any of this, we can definitely talk about that as well, and where you can go for information. So again, just dementia, think of it as a broad umbrella term, but it's important to figure out what's causing dementia. Also, because there are reversible types of dementia symptoms. So for example, when an older individual develops a urinary tract infection, they can look exactly like someone who has Alzheimer's disease, but in that situation, it generally comes on wham, just really quick, and often includes some bizarre behaviors or speech that is completely not understandable. So there's a lot of different things that can happen in the body, again, that can cause dementia symptoms, but a UTI is treatable and therefore reversible. So one of the most important things is to learn about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, so that if there's ever a concern, it's always the most important thing is to be able to contact and go see a doctor to determine, okay, what's causing it. Again, we know Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia, and that it is not a normal part of aging. It is a progressive brain disease. So now we're going to look a little bit closer in the brain, which I know sounds a little graphic, but it's actually fascinating. And we're going to hear from another expert now.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer's described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feelings. There are about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons throughout the brain that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, feelings, and thoughts. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to the brain tissue loss, or what we call shrinkage, and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, planning, behavioral issues, and even at the end stages, problems with swallowing.
Again, I wish that lasted longer, but Dr. Hartley he just described so many things in there, and talking about that, it's not just one part of the brain that is damaged by Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. It's several parts. For Alzheimer's in particular, a lot of times damage occurs in the part of the brain that holds our short-term memory. Something that happened 5 minutes ago, or maybe yesterday, or maybe a couple of weeks ago. So it also, he points out different, there's so many different, there are, what did he say? There are billions of networks and brain cells in the brain that become damaged by Alzheimer's disease. And so when we see that, and when we learn that the brain actually, those brain cells, once they die, we don't have anything yet in science that either will bring them back to life or reconnect them or stop this from spreading. And so as the disease progresses, things become more and more difficult for an individual to be able to do things on their own, to be able to eat on their own and dress and bathe and just all of those things. That means that the disease is progressing, and the brain actually goes through shrinkage. It goes through atrophy. And so as we learn this, it's so important when we tell families, think of this all the time as it's the disease. It's not your loved one doing these behaviors to drive you crazy or to make you angry or to just really get under your skin. They are not able to control what is happening due to what's happening in their brain. And I think one reason why this disease can be so difficult is because we can't see it. When you're face to face with someone and if someone has an injury, we can see them and go, oh gosh, that must hurt, or that must be. But with this, we can't see it, and so sometimes it's hard to even imagine that this is happening. Or as a caregiver, sometimes you think you're the one who has Alzheimer's because of your lack of memory and concentration. So it's just really important to learn this and to understand more about how it spreads throughout the brain. And that, again, it's not just the memory part, but the part of our brain that holds our ability to talk and walk, and our personality, and our ability to plan. Even just going into the restroom and brushing our teeth includes a plan. And when that part of the brain is damaged, that's when you can walk in and maybe see someone putting toothpaste on a hairbrush rather than on the correct thing, because that part of the brain is not able to just follow those plans. So risk factors, again, although Alzheimer's disease is not a normal part of aging, we do know that age is still listed as the top risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease. So when you hit 65, your risk increases substantially, and it just kind of skyrockets from there. 1 out of 10 people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's, and about 1 out of 3 over the age of 85 years old have Alzheimer's disease. So it really skyrockets after 65. Now it's estimated by a lot of researchers that actually it's in the brain. The disease can be in the brain. They are looking at doing research on much younger individuals and believing that it could be in the brain for up to 20 years before any symptoms are seen. So it's possible that symptoms are what really start to appear at 65 and older, but that it's even there much at a much younger age. So more to come on that. We also know that probably just gave away the answers here, but that's okay. So there's a couple things where we just want to, What's the greatest known risk factor? So the things that are listed are genetics, family history, and age. And again, when we look at all of those things can play a part in being a risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease. And so we're going to hear from Dr. Snyder again.
Alzheimer's disease is marked by specific brain changes that result in the clinical changes in individual experiences. That is, changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. And ultimately, Alzheimer's is fatal. The exact cause for these changes is unknown, but there are some hints as to what may contribute to an individual's risk. Age is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's. And when we look at populations of people, we see an increased risk over the age of 65. However, Alzheimer's is not normal aging. Family history is also a known risk factor. Research has shown that those who have a parent or a sibling with Alzheimer's are more likely to develop the disease, and that risk increases if more than one family member has Alzheimer's. When we talk about the genes involved in Alzheimer's, there are two categories that could potentially be involved: risk genes and deterministic genes. Risk genes increases an individual's risk for developing the disease, but does not guarantee that they will develop Alzheimer's. Deterministic genes, which are rare for Alzheimer's, guarantee that the person will develop the disease.
So I'm sorry that was a little bit choppy, but as Dr. Schneider was explaining, yes, family history and genetics play a part, but we don't necessarily call Alzheimer's disease a genetic disease, because individuals who have none in their family history can still develop the disease, again, because of growing older, which we are all at risk for developing Alzheimer's because we are all aging every minute. But she also talks about risk factors that jump up based on other things as well. And so we know now that there are populations that are at higher risk. We know that Hispanic individuals have a 1.5 times prevalence of developing Alzheimer's disease as their Caucasian counterparts. And for African Americans, that's twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as Caucasians. We also know that women are also at a higher risk factor. Almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's disease are women. And that is not acceptable either. So there are a lot of other things that, again, that researchers are looking into to look at what other types of things, such as comorbidities, other diseases. We know that cardiovascular disease and diabetes now increase your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. They are looking at, certainly there have been some incredible large studies in blood pressure to look at what is that, how does that have an influence, and so that also includes research on what are some things that are modifiable as far as risk factors to lower our risk for developing Alzheimer's. We don't have a way to prevent developing Alzheimer's disease yet, but there are things that we can do that we do have control over. The foods that we eat, the things that how we take care of our heart, all of those things. So just as a recap, we know age, greatest risk factor. Family history is a risk factor. Having a parent or a sibling increases your risk, but it does not mean that you are going to develop it. There are risk genes and deterministic genes. Deterministic genes are very, very, very rare. And it's those individuals who very much are likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. But again, they're extremely rare. And then we know Hispanics, African American individuals, and women are at an increased risk And there's a lot of studies happening to try to determine why is that. So stages. Let's see how we're doing on time here. We do have, I won't show all of these, but here, let me show this one.
One of the things that impacts our brain is all the other things that can happen to us as we age. And we know that Alzheimer's, the most common risk factor for getting Alzheimer's disease is age. But we also have lots of other things that go wrong with us as we age. And so how those other health factors impact our brain can also impact how Alzheimer's presents in other people.
So we say, if you've seen a person with Alzheimer's disease, you've seen one person with Alzheimer's disease. Every person has different symptoms. Not everyone follows the same progression. It doesn't progress exactly the same for everyone. Not everyone has the same symptoms. For some, it's much more language-based. For some, wandering is a huge, huge issue, a safety factor. For others, it's never a problem. Having a door as a cue that, oh, that means I need to go out the door, does not play a part at all. So again, if you have had a loved one, or if you hear someone else sharing, well, gosh, you know, my sister's aunt or whatever did all these kind of things, and I know that's what we have to look forward to. That's not the case. There are stages of progression, but again, not everyone has the same symptoms. For some, it's losing words. For others, it's frustration and not being able to count out change at the grocery store. So let me continue on here. I think this is Dr.
Alzheimer's affects everyone differently. As a result, it's difficult to place a person in a specific stage of the disease. However, there are 3 general stages that are commonly referred to as early, middle, and late stage Alzheimer's. In a medical context, you may hear these stages referred to as mild, moderate, and severe. In the early stage of Alzheimer's, an individual may be able to function independently. However, they may start noticing more frequent memory lapses. Friends and family may also begin to notice difficulties in the person, and a healthcare provider may be able to detect problems in memory or concentration by conducting a detailed medical interview. Middle stage Alzheimer's is typically the longest stage and can last for many years. Damage to the brain cells can make it difficult to express thoughts and perform routine tasks, and this can lead to increased feelings of frustration and anger. In the final stage of the disease, an individual loses the ability to hold a conversation, control their movements, or respond to the environment around them. Cognitive skills, that is their memory, thinking, and reasoning skills, continue to decline, and this can lead to personality changes and need for round-the-clock care.
So we have a lot more information on our website, or we have a lot of handouts that go much deeper into the stages of the disease, different symptoms. The main thing is that it's so gray. You can have an individual who has symptoms that are considered in early stage and in middle stage at the same time. The Alzheimer's Association, again, we refer to them as mild, moderate, or severe, early, middle, late. We know that doctors use more specific, sometimes a scale with 7 points on it, etc. The most important thing is really determining where your loved one is in the process. Not, are they in 5 or in 6, but where are they as far as things that they're still able to do on their own, and where are they in that, no, truly they need assistance, such as in the restroom, with bathing, with not wearing the same outfit all week long and insisting that they've changed. So the stages really have to do with how do we care for someone based on where they are in this process, where, again, are they still able to do some things? And we certainly want them to be as independent as possible, while also knowing, though, that things are going to progress. And it's usually safety issues that have an impact on when we really have to step in and start making decisions on behalf of another person based on where they are in the stages. what they're and hygiene and those types of things. But again, we have a lot more information on this. That just kind of goes into it briefly. Also, it is important to know that Alzheimer's disease is fatal. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. And for all individuals over the age of 65, it's the 5th leading cause of death. And it's fatal because as it progresses through the disease, the brain is no longer able to tell the body basically how for organs to function and for things to be able to continue working. So again, it's important to that's so hard to hear, and it's just so difficult, but it's important again to know that this is progressive. And so the earlier in the process we can have those difficult discussions about money and finances and legal terms, power of attorney, and what someone's wishes are when they're at the end of their life. All those are really important because there will reach a point in the stages where an individual will not be able to tell us those things. I like on this recap, it says no two individuals experience symptoms and progression in the same way. Again, it's different for everyone. The progression is also different based on what type of dementia it is. Vascular dementia progresses differently than Alzheimer's, etc. And while symptoms worsen, people progress through stages at different rates. And it's all about their abilities. How do their abilities change? So we'll briefly talk about FDA-approved treatments for symptoms of dementia. So one of the true-false questions is, there are several drugs available to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Well, actually, that's a false statement in that we don't have any medications as of now that actually keep the disease from progressing. Do they help with symptoms? Absolutely. But the underlying cause of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, continues to progress. We're going to hear from our expert again.
There are currently several drugs that are FDA approved to treat the cognitive symptoms associated with Alzheimer's disease. They treat the symptoms, but they don't treat the underlying cause. So eventually people will progress, but they do treat some of the symptoms and help people for a time. So the first class of drugs are cholinesterase inhibitors. These drugs work to prevent the breakdown of acetylcholine, which is a chemical messenger found in the brain that's associated with learning and memory. There are 3 FDA-approved drugs that are in this class of drugs. There's Aricept, there's Exelon, and there's Razodine. There's another class of drugs that modulates glutamate, which is another chemical messenger in the brain that's associated with learning and memory. And this drug is called Namenda. And then there's a final class, which is actually a combination of cholinesterase inhibitors and glutamate modulator, and this is called Namzaric.
So you may be familiar with the name that Aricept or Exelon or Namenda or Namzaric, which is memantine and which is Namenda and Aricept in a combination. So again, these treatments, for some individuals, they just seem to get through the day better. Their symptoms seem to not be as much. For some individuals who try some of these medications, the families, they don't see any change. And for some, there are negative side effects. So again, if you hear someone comment about a drug, just know that it may very well, it's not going to have the same effect on your loved one. And all of these are things to discuss with a physician and with hopefully a special physician like a neurologist or a geriatrician who has experience specifically with these medications to be able to look at adjusting them and and all those kind of things. But again, it's important to note that right now, none of them keep the disease from either happening or from progressing throughout the brain. So next, we've got to touch on research, because research is the key to all of this, to finding a cure, to stopping the progression. If someone gets Alzheimer's disease, how do we stop it? And then prevention for everyone else. So I'm going to play a couple of these videos.
This is an incredibly exciting time in Alzheimer's and dementia research. The advancements that we've made in the last decade to understand the disease as a continuum, meaning that the biological changes are starting a decade or more before someone is experiencing the changes in the memory and thinking. This sets the stage for possible prevention. The idea that when we have the tools to identify those individuals at the earliest time point, and when we have the interventions to target individuals at that earliest time point, we can intervene to stop or slow the progression of the disease before an individual loses their memories.
I'm excited about what we're learning these days regarding lifestyle. One of those things that we've seen in the past are things like exercise and nutrition have now started to gain more momentum to indicate to us that it can change your ability to slow cognitive decline. That is really the first stages of Alzheimer's disease. This may include things like social engagement, mental cognitive training. It can be things such as exercise. It can be nutrition. All those things are now starting to point that they will lower your risk for Alzheimer's disease.
So lots of things happening in the world of research. And we know that, again, this isn't a disease that's just in the United States. So not only are there hundreds of studies being done here, but worldwide, there are countries and research studies that are being held all over the world, looking at, again, prevention, treatments, a cure. What we know is that all of that happens through clinical trials. And so if you are interested, I love our tagline with this, don't just hope for a cure, help us find one. Anyone can register themselves in a program called Trial Match. And it's a clinical studies matching service. You set up a confidential profile of yourself, and the system, based on all of the research trials that are out there, will see if you might be an initial match for a study based on your age, or you name it, demographics, etc. And you're not enrolling into a study, but you are saying, I'm interested in seeing if I'm a match. And then you will be contacted, if you are, to see if you'd like more information about that particular study. There are studies happening here in San Antonio and across Texas that are specific to Alzheimer's and other dementias, and they need individuals. So I know we're in a really different time frame right now, but we were just recently contacted by Dr. Royal with UT Health, and they are looking for individuals for their study. So all of these things, you can go to, you can call our helpline or go into Trial Match and enroll. And this is for people who don't have dementia, who do have dementia. It's just anyone 18 and older can register. And they need, again, people who have it or don't. alz.org/trialmatch is where you can sign up, or you can call our helpline number, which I'm about to give. But again, these studies really hold the key, and they're not just medication studies. Again, like Dr. Hartley was saying, there's studies on environment, foods, all kinds of, quality of life. What's the best way to care for someone? So there's a lot happening, more so than ever. I want to make sure you have information about the Alzheimer's Association. Our helpline is 1-800-272-3900, and it is available day or night, every weekend, 2:00 in the morning. If you need to speak with someone, if you have questions, if this presentation has brought up all kinds of questions, We are always available 24/7 and in over 200 languages. So if you need translation, we've got it. We also have a ton of information on our website, alz.org. And we also are partnered with AARP on a database called Community Resource Finder, where you can find resources by zip code. And that is alz.org/CRF. Just going to leave this up here as well, just ways to join the fight. Lots of things that we always need volunteers. We are advocating. Right now we have a bill that we're advocating for regarding elder abuse and individuals with Alzheimer's disease. So lots of advocacy at the local and state and federal level. Again, Trial Match is helping with research, and then our walk to end Alzheimer's, which we know our walks in the fall are going to look different than they ever have before. We're not in a position where we're going to be able to bring 4,000 people together. So we're figuring out how to still have this very important event, but in a different way so that we're all safe. So questions, and how are we doing? I left about 5 minutes, I guess. Any questions or comments? That was pretty quick and brief.
I have a question. This is Nikki over at Morgan's Wonderland.
Hi, Nikki.
So, hi, Jenny. Thank you for the information as always, both for our community, Morgan's Wonderland, and always for me personally. It's always helpful as well. I was not prepared to be in this situation, but here we are. So what kind of doctor would diagnose, as previously said, it's good to have a diagnosis, but I don't know what kind of doctor that is. So can you share that?
Sure, great question. So generally we start with our primary care physician, and sometimes for a specialist, they need to have a referral from your primary care physician. Some don't, most do. So it's important to prepare when going to a doctor's appointment with your loved one. They may not always be readily wanting to share. So we do advise, write things down very specifically that you are seeing and that you're concerned about. Behaviors, things that are new that you don't understand what your loved one's doing. Your loved one may know that they're happening and can very easily want to stay in denial about it. Or your loved one can also be in a stage of the disease where they don't know that they don't know. And so no amount of arguing or talking with them is going to help. So when going to a doctor's appointment, it's always very important that the doctor has your viewpoint so that you can share your concerns, even if you have to slip that note to the nurse and not make your loved one angry, and say, look, we need to have an evaluation. We need to have this looked at. Some primary care physicians have the tools available to make a diagnosis, but generally it's a neurologist or a geriatrician or a neuropsychiatrist. And all of this, you can, if you go to alz.org and just type in diagnosis, we have all this information. Also referrals of, okay, where are those doctors? It's important to try to get an appointment as soon as possible because there are not near enough, and there's often a waiting time period. So, and what they do is a doctor who is truly skilled and trained in this is going to do much more than just a memory test or asking your loved ones, who's the president, things like that. They're going to do a medical exam, again, to rule out that this isn't an infection of some kind or a vitamin B deficiency or a thyroid issue. All of those things can cause dementia symptoms. Those are considered treatable. They should also have certainly interviews with family members because you're often the ones who are able to describe what's really happening. I used to go to the doctor's office with my mom, and the doctor would ask her a question and she'd look at me and I would answer until finally I'd go, hello, I need the doctor to see that she's not able to answer the question. And so I just have to sit here and make sure the doctor sees that. So that's really important too. So there are also PET scans, which are still, some of those things are extremely expensive, but again, something on the research end of things, if you can get into a clinical trial, a lot of those things you can actually get through being in the trial. But so there's a lot of different ways that now specialty physicians can make a diagnosis and at least say, okay, this is dementia, and we don't have to wait until after autopsy, after someone passes, to be able to determine this is Alzheimer's or this is vascular, or again, a lot of times based on what you're describing that's happening. The other thing I would say is if you're struggling with even how do you get your loved one in the car to get to a doctor's appointment, call our helpline, because we can give you tips. Try this, try this, try this. Don't explain. They're not going to understand it anyway, or they're going to be in denial and be very angry. So call us so that we can walk you through the steps of how do you even get this accomplished.
Thank you.
That was a long answer.
That's good.
My mom has Alzheimer's. She's had it for 13 years.
I was actually just getting my record deal when I found out my grandmother was starting to get worse with Alzheimer's.
Song is what can really be a remedy for the hard times that surround Alzheimer's.
It's a possibility, a potential in all of our lives. Whatever research we can do at this present time is absolutely important.
If they could find a cure, it would be heaven.
I think awareness is the key to everything.
And if music can help with that in any way, that's a very special thing for an artist.
It's some kind of magic. It's the magic of music.
We're going to find a day when Alzheimer's is no more, and we will sing a lot more songs about it.
Hey everybody, it's Jonathan Barker, your Walk to End Alzheimer's chairman. I'm out here at this year's new walk venue, and it's a little bit slow right now, but come October 24th, we're going to be turning Six Flags Fiesta Texas purple. I'm very excited about this new opportunity, and I'm even more excited to announce that not only is the walk going to be inside Six Flags, but they're offering us free parking for all participants, as well as the option to purchase a half-price ticket to stay for the rest of the day. We're really excited about the opportunity to grow, and we look forward to seeing you out here at the walk on October 24th. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see y'all soon.